Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the organizers for this opportunity to have this discussion. I'm quite excited. I've had a chance to speak with the panelists prior, and I felt like we should have had the panel right there and then because it was very exciting. So, our panel today will consider a topic that has gained a lot of popularity over the last 5 or so years. And in gaining popularity, it has also gained a lot of complexity. And we're talking about ESG, so environmental, social, and governance responsibilities of companies. Now, ESG as a concept brings about a lot of new facets when it comes to risks and opportunities to the business. And this definitely has an impact to the legal function of the business. So we are very keen to be hearing from our counsels from several industries. We've got medical technology, we've got enterprise application software, and we also have a practicing lawyer. So now I'm just going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves very quickly and to share their first experience in the ESG realm. So maybe, Naveen, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hannah, and thank you to all the audiences for sparing your time to listen to us, and I guess this is going to be an exciting talk. My name is Naveen, and I'm the Associate Director at Terumo Asia Holdings, which is a regional headquarters for Terumo Corporation. We are a global MedTech company from Japan, and
Naveen, you're a bit soft. Put the mic closer.
Okay, now audible? Okay, so Terumo is a global medical technology company from Japan, and we manufacture a lot of healthcare products, medical devices, equipments, which has even body implants as well, which are quite complex and all that. So, it's a 100 years old company. In terms of ESG, I would say that 100 years old company means that, okay, we would not have been here if we were not socially responsible, right? So that's very important and is at the core of the company, because the corporate mission itself is contributing to the society through healthcare. So that's all about me and my company. Yeah.
Thank you, Naveen. Kalindee, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kalindee Mehta. I am currently heading the legal function for SAP in the Asia Pacific and Japan region. Prior to my current role, I did a short business role, but overall have been in legal functions, started my career with investment banks and have been moving around into IT products and services space. I think when I talk about ESG as a topic, right, I feel it's a vast universe which comprises of a lot of elements, every element being an important one. It's like, each drop in the ocean is equally important, and it's so huge that you can practically not cover everything. One thing that I really love about SAP is that, we are really wanting to use how technology can help our customers drive sustainable, profitable, and resilient business. For us, sustainability is a very big thing. We are a German headquartered company, and you know how European companies are really prioritizing the climate action, and the discussions in COP27 really make front and center of what our business strategies and priorities are. So I'm very excited to be here today to share what I've learned in the process and how we are, as a legal function, contributing towards not only SAP's ambition but also helping our customers drive, their mission. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kalindee. All right, Mr. Chatterjee.
I'm Swarnendu Chatterjee. I am a practicing lawyer in Delhi. I'm an advocate on record in the Supreme Court, and my practice base is in India. As a part of my decade-long career, I have encountered and have advised clients on various environmental issues. You see, India has been India has made it presence felt since G20 summit since 2008, and and since 2008 you have the 2008 and 2011 you have a specific action plan in the Ministry of Finance, and you have carbon tax and green bonds coming up in India, as well as the NSE and the BSE has made it mandatory for some of the companies to have their indices regulated through the stock exchanges and in the ESG indices. So therefore, one of the major fields which I would like to talk about here and which we would discuss is how the Indian market or the Indian companies and the challenges faced by the Indian councils while advising the clients on the ESG program and the sustainability projects and also the green investment projects which are important, including the CSR.
Thank you. So I think it's quite exciting. We've got two different perspectives here. We've got the in-house counsel perspective and the advisor from private practice. So jumping straight into this, I guess the first question that I would have is, how does your organization contribute to the ESG space? And I know, Naveen, you already mentioned that your organization would have had to be socially responsible in order to survive the last 100 years. So how has your organization contributed to the ESG space, and specifically how your legal team has been involved in that journey?
Okay, so I would start it from here. The very first beginning of my company itself was that, it is a Japanese company, started from Japan. And the people who, if anybody is from Japan, then they know the name of my company. They also always associated with the thermometer, the real, very humble thermometer. After the World War I, there was whole lot of need of thermometer, and the founders of the company, who was medical scientists itself, doctors, they brought thermometer, or started manufacturing thermometer in Japan for the first time. And that is the humble beginnings of my company. And today the product portfolio is it's blood and cell technologies. It has products which has applications into the medical services, and also blood processing machines and body implants, which are including in the open heart surgery, in the field of cardiovascular and thoracic surgery and all that, right? So these journey of 100 years, as I mentioned, that we would not have been here if we were not socially responsible. So the core purpose of the company itself is to contribute to the society, right? And that is never possible if a company is not socially responsible. Now, the point is that, how we are socially responsible and how do we articulate it? So in our space, what happens is that, we manufacture medical products and solutions, right? And the users of these medical products and solutions, the end customers are always the patients, but the users who make decisions for the patients are the doctors, right? So we need to interact a lot with the doctors. We need to educate them. We need to train them on our products. And so this is a very valid business need, and is a social responsibility also. The contribution of legal into it goes on to, in like that, we have to do this while we are do not influence the doctor's decisions, which should always be for the patients and for the benefit of the patients. And a whole realm of laws get into this, primarily the anti-bribery laws, because this education programs, training programs, CSR programs of the company should not breach that blurred line that, it amounts to bribery. And for that, we require a compliance program, and me and my team, we actually work on that front a lot. So advising the business how to design and modulate all these programs so that we are always on the right, doing the right thing, right? So that is one phases of it, and a few more I will introduce later, yeah?
Thank you, Naveen. I think it's really interesting that it sounds like as a legal team, you look beyond the immediate law that you have to comply with and into the heart of what's the purpose of it. And so that's where responsibility comes into play. It's not just about I've got to comply with this law, but it's also why. Yeah. Okay, Kalindee, over to you.
Hannah, thanks for the question. It's a very interesting one, and I'm sorry, but it's going to be like a real long response to a short question. I think when we look at ESG, right, it embraces topics like what are your environmental responsibility, what are your societal responsibility in terms of giving back, and what are your governance requirement. So when you look at and I think for us at SAP, it's not just about our legal function and our contribution to our organization, but how do we also enable our customers to achieve those, because they are running their massive processes, their critical business operations on our platforms, on our networks, and we have the visibility of how the networks are coming together to give them a meaningful insight, and how do we help them with the use of those data and technology to culminate the entire mission. So I think Asia has been the manufacturing hub, and I think it goes back to the past. It's a very different debate that for Europe they really wanted to keep their environments and everything very clean. US had a similar regime, so the entire manufacturing processes came to the emerging markets. We started developing standards on the environmental controls. I think sustainability is becoming the biggest thing that people are really worried about. I read somewhere, and I think this either of the Obama couples mentioning that we are probably the first generation to face the impact of the climate change, and we are the last one who can actually do something about it. So the responsibility for us to leave the planet in a greener way for the future generation is so pertinent, and we cannot not do that, right? You cannot abuse something and leave it in a messy state for future use. Again, societal obligations are, how do you talk about and how do you walk that talk on aspects like diversity and inclusion, local consumption. Your economies are being shattered by the largest e-commerce, and I have nothing against them. But as a responsible citizen, are you taking care of your indigenous, suppliers? So how do you bring that? How are you ensuring that there is no child labor? We have the UK Modern Slavery Act. A lot of other things which are very, very important from the societal perspective. And I think when we move towards the G of governance, so it starts with, of course, how are your investors looking at you, right? You manage your top line and you are managing your bottom line, but where is your green line? So today, the whole financing world is tilting towards green financing. Are you using sustainable energy? Are you, getting into the circular economy? It's like recycle, reuse, and refurbish. So how are you bringing all of these different elements together? And I think when I look at it from an in-house perspective, it's not just one-step process. In my head, it's a three-step process. One is that you create an awareness and education in the organization that these elements are going to be very important. So till now, we were only talking about the profits. But now we have the elements like people, purpose, partnerships, and profit. And when I say partnership, I probably talk about the entire ecosystem which is working for you. It becomes quite tangential on multiple aspects. So the first step is education and awareness. The second step is how you are using the data in a very meaningful way. So for example, we were working for one of the logistics company, and we are now using technology to see what can be the best efficient route for the trucks to ply, so they are not only saving the cost. The fuel is very expensive these days, right? So you're not only saving the cost, but you're also, having lesser carbon footprint. So when we say sustainability, we are also trying to ensure that our customers feel the value of profitability also blended into the concept of sustainability. So the second element is, how do you make use of the data in a structured way, which gives you a picture to make your business operations more efficient and sustainable at the same time. And then the third element is how do you get your ecosystem together. So for example, in our contracts, we would try to ensure that, we, of course, have our suppliers commit to certain level of carbon emission. They will use local suppliers or indigenous suppliers. They will, we try to source a lot of things from, say, only women organization or only transgender, or depending on where you are located, right? So you should have those suppliers also available, but to the extent possible, and even if it means that they are slightly more premium, it's our way of giving back and encouraging them in terms of what they do as a business and how they survive and thrive. And so this is how the legal would contribute, right? So you put into your agreements the clauses which will help bring all of these elements together. I think if I could have my wish list, I would probably have an ESG addendum to each contract which says, okay, you know, this is how you're going to do it. It's literally a far-fetched thing, but I don't think the day is very far away when you can, you know, bring together, and it will become a beautiful connected world, right, where everybody is focused on the same objective.
Thank you, Kalindee. Yeah, no, I think you painted a very beautiful vision about how organizations can not just contribute, you know, in terms of what they do, but also bring in a larger sort of network of their partners to be able to work towards the same vision. I think that's great. So, Mr. Chatterjee, I mean, we've got two very enlightened and progressive in-house counsel here that are, you know, very much on the ball when it comes to ESG. But as a practicing lawyer, and I know you do a lot of work in the environmental space, how do you work with your clients that are struggling to achieve some of these goals or these aims, or, you know, sometimes your clients may not think it is important? What are some of the approaches that you take?
See, when I was part of the two major firms in India, and now also, I had the chance of advising a lot of clients who are setting up industries, especially in the textiles or in the mining industries, especially in the parts of Orissa and other parts of northern India. And there are green belts which are notified in India. There is a special economic zone which is notified especially. And in India, you have something which has come up since 2015 as green bonds, right? The Adani Renewable Green Bonds and the other green bonds which have come up. And especially the stock exchanges have made it mandatory since 2012 to publish the ESG indices. And also the CSR program, it's part of the statute. So when we advise people, especially the people who are setting up industries or the investors, some of the major roadblocks which I have faced is that the environmental issues, although they seem relevant at one point of time, they do not seem relevant at the very beginning, because they feel in India especially, we feel that the labor issues and the credit issues are more important than the environmental issues, which I was just discussing with you. But environmental issues become very important, has become very important with the NGT clamping, with the National Green Tribunal, which has come up since 2010, clamping down, as well as the Supreme Court becoming very serious about the environmental emissions and the degrading quality of the air, as well as the current government, which is very serious about the India's commitments toward climate change pact. So the clients whom we advise, we advise especially on the sustainable governance, the CSR, as well as on the green bonds. The green bonds contribute especially 0.7% to the GDP of the country. So the maturity period of being 10 years, and the green and also the emissions and the affluents being controlled through the special legislations. The legislations were not updated for a long period of time, which are being updated right now, making it mandatory. The pollution control boards clamping down. So we have a have a lot of advisory work when it comes to industries in India, advising them. The major roadblocks which we face as lawyers in India is the seriousness regarding the enforceability and the adherence to the laws. But now people have become more serious. People are becoming serious because licenses are getting cancelled, and the government has become serious, as I've mentioned to you. And the green bonds, of course, the carbon tax and the green bonds are being enforced seriously in India. And the Reserve Bank has come up with the Green Investment Bank and the Green Finance projects, which are important in today's field. So while advising clients, nowadays, the major roadblock which I faced 5 years ago has reduced considerably now because of the enforceability of the legislations and the courts becoming very serious about this environmental issues.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. It's interesting because it almost sounds like in this space you needed to have a crystal ball 5 years ago to see the risks that would be arising today. So I guess my next question would be, with this in mind, what sort of perspectives, new perspectives or skills do you think in-house legal teams need to develop in order to be equipped to rise up to the challenge of ESG moving forward?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. So from this perspective, taking it from the chat of Mr. Chatterjee, what happens is that, okay, if we go 10 years back or 15 years back, then the definition of the word compliance itself is that comply with the applicable law, right? So if organizations has that, say, mindset, then they will always be chasing the laws that, okay, this new law has come, let's break it down into actionable items and let's comply with it. And over the period of time, among the compliance professionals, there is one consensus that, okay, the compliance programs actually cannot succeed or cannot work like that. What actually need to do is, and that is why, that, okay, there need to be a culture of values, ethics, and if an organization has a culture of values and ethics, then the compliance will flow automatically, and it will be very helpful. And over this period of time, also the compliance or a compliance program is not just a artistic thing. It is a necessity and it is a structured science now. There are set formulas that, okay, you work on your culture, you work on your ethics programs, and your compliance program will succeed. That comes Kalindee also mentioned that, okay, the awareness programs, the training programs, and then tone at the top is the very most important thing, in the sense that, okay, if the board of the organization, if the senior management of the organization is quite serious and they trickle down this masses to all parts of the organization, then things will start running into. So that is the perspective which the organizations need to develop. And then the next part of it is okay, how the legal and compliance department can contribute it. So the core legal, say, skills that, okay, read the law, interpret the law, and let's get it done. So that is one thing. And contributing to the organization in driving this culture of values and ethics is another aspect which has emerged. And that is where, the confluence of legal as a profession and compliance as a profession we can see in most of the organizations today, right? So that is why, most of the organizations today's, they have, a code of conduct, core values, corporate mission, and that is what drives the entire organization. And one part of the responsibility of the legal and compliance departments is to work in that direction, to actually partner with the business and drive that program. And the same principle applies to this ESG as well, right? So in ESG space, what we can see is that, okay, and this is a trend, what used to be kind of voluntary obligations from the organizations that, okay, this is my social responsibility, I will be doing this, I will be giving back to the society. What we will be seeing, and we are seeing, is that, okay, that becomes law. So what is a voluntary obligation today is going to become a law. One classic example of this is Modern Slavery Act. It started from UK, and now I see it in Australia also. Mr. Chatterjee has talked about a lot about this, in terms of green bonds and all that stuff, which is happening in India, right? So we will see this trend to grow further, right? And we will be seeing that, okay, this is going to be complex and intensify over the time, and people has to work on their cultures, basically, to drive the ESG programs. That's my thought about it.
Thank you, Naveen. I really like that idea that it's not just about relying on the laws, but you also have to look at building a culture. So I think that opens a whole other box. But before we go there, Kalindee, what are your thoughts?
So, Hannah, I think, when you, just building on top of what Naveen said, right? You, of course, need the tone from the top. And I think the consequences of not complying are so grave. If I talk about who are your ESG stakeholders, right? So one is your employees, one is your customers, your suppliers, and the ecosystem. Let's talk about privacy for a minute. It's becoming such a large, must-do, must-have element in your governance list that you cannot afford to not comply with it. I mean, we know how the valuation of companies, Facebook went through this, that, if you are little mild, forget about you not, you're doing it, but you're not doing it 100% in letters and spirit. Your valuations depend on how you are complying with these parameters. Similarly, how you treat your employees. I think we recently, in last 2 weeks, saw some of the episodes which were really bizarre, right? Can you treat your employees the way the incidents happen? You probably cannot. So the whole awareness about you being there 100% letters and spirit is very important. I think legal teams do not struggle a lot to convince the board that these are the priorities. Your security, data security is again becoming a very big thing, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war. There are so many ransomware attacks. How do you keep your data secure, your customers' data secure? So all of this is also somewhere linking back to ESG. And I think not only in terms of compliance and you checking all the boxes, but when you go to the market for seeking investment funds, the whole topic of green financing, the way the investors look at you, the percentage of credits really depend on how sustainable operations are you running. So it's literally becoming the front and center from all perspective. And as legal team, it's important that we are keeping a tab. We can start small. It doesn't have to be that you start with a 1,000-item laundry list. Pick up top 5 items that you're going to focus in a particular year, and then slowly expand. But whatever you do has to be very robust, and I think that's where our skills, our experience, tying it back to the regulations and the project management, everything comes together where you can create the structure which is going to go for many years and decades.
Thank you, Kalindee. So it sounds like, it's not just the core legal skills alone that will get you there, but there's a lot of other skills that are needed by the legal team to be able to achieve that.
I can't stop myself adding one thing. Nowadays, the legal function, the lawyers, it's not just about that core legal skills. It is a lot of work regarding the design thinking. That, okay, your organization need to meet objectives, these objectives. Along the way, these are the risks. And to address those risks, what is the design you are going to create or set up in your organization which will take care of those risks in the longer term, continuously. And that is where we start talking about, okay, risk assessment. We identify new risk assessments, we create new processes to address those risks, and we then monitor it, and we again find the gap, and we again go back, revamp our processes to continue addressing this. So this kind of work, which is goes on in a cyclic manner, this has also become part or is in the bucket of the legal profession or legal and compliance profession nowadays. So things have changed, and it will keep on evolving, changing. Technology also intersect with this function a lot. Nowadays we are using a lot of tools. We really need to understand what is AI and where we can leverage. The earlier panel were talking a lot about it, and that has also become an essential part of our function. We have I mean to say that, okay, in the legal departments now we need to have designers which can think the ingenious way, and also educators, because we need to do a lot of focus on a lot of training and etc. Right? So these are the new facets of the legal function, which and the responsibilities which we need to meet on a day-to-day basis.
Very exciting. So lawyers are not just lawyers anymore. But Mr. Chat, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, yes, you are very right. The legal function is not just, limited to the traditional way of looking at the law, interpreting it, or fighting a litigation, right? You are a business leader, being part of the core leadership of your company. You have a seat on the table, you have a voice, and probably a voice which is strongest. So just leverage it.
That's a good point. Yeah, Mr. Chatterjee, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, specifically as a practicing lawyer, what are some of the new skills or mindsets that you had to adopt in order to be effective, especially in the realm of public law and environmental law? Or what are some of the skills that you wish your clients had in order to achieve sort of the ESG goals they set for themselves?
See, I would address these questions in two parts. First of all, in India, from a global perspective, when we see India, we see the industrial development and the industrial goals. Industrialists coming up with a lot of projects, and the investors coming into India. India being seen and perceived as a global investment hub. So, from that perspective, the part one of the question, as I said, would be broken up like this. Like when we advise this set of clients, the kind of structure which we have to, like what Naveen said, that we have to be like a designer in our mind. Like it's like you build a roadmap for your clients, so that it's ultimately a business, but the business rests on compliance. Because if you don't comply with the compliance part, then the laws will come after you, and then you spend millions on litigation, which will ultimately fetch nothing after years and years of fighting. And so when we advise these type of clients, the new age clients, the new age investors, which we or the in-house counsels are more equipped on these compliance related issues, because they have environmental specialists which they consult. The agreements are drafted in such a way. The government bodies, especially when we deal with the government party bodies for the issuance of licenses and all, the checks and balances, the people who are engaged in such government bodies are also aware of these laws. It's not the bureaucracy system which is there. Even the bureaucrats are aware of these laws. The training goes in that fashion. So this is the part one of the answer to your question, that when we address this set of clients, these are the new things which we have to keep in mind as a lawyer, that the clients who are coming to you know a lot of things. They know the major, the penumbra of the things, but not the intricacies. So your vision should be to let them know about the intricacies, the do's and the don'ts, and what will happen if X is not done or Y is not complied. This is the major thing, because you are the one, you are the lawyer, and you are in the know-how of the business. So you must be aware of what is to be done and what is not to be done, and why it is to be done. So, excuse me. And the next set of clients are the Indian industrialists who employ people. See, there are foreign companies which are coming up in India, as well as the Indian companies which are coming up in India, like the Adanis and the Reliance and all. But when we see the local companies which are coming up, the local businessmen who are coming up, they need to be advised more thoroughly than the big industrialists. Of course, that is there because excuse me, because the major roadblock which we face in major shift which I have to do as a lawyer, in while advising those set of clients, is that you have to, from pin to elephant, you have to explain it to them that A, B, C, D, A to Z, you have to do all these things, a major checklist kind of a thing. So when we approach this set of clients, we have to prepare a checklist, and as a checklist, you have to explain what are the consequences if you don't do, because the normal response which you get is, we'll do it but first let us focus on the profitability, etc. Profitability will come later. First you run the business, and then the profitability will come. If you do not comply, the compliance part, the roadmap, and the initial focus is on the roadmap as a counsel for me when I'm advising these sort of clients. When I'm overall, when I say 50% or 70% of the clients understand the overall perspective, 30% of the clients do not understand the overall perspective and they falter over there. And when they face issues with the licensing, dumping, or releasing of affluents, the emissions, the not investing of green bonds, etc., there they face the legal hurdles. They do not publish as indices. These non-compliance part is one of the major hurdles which we have to face as lawyers in India, and which we have to address to the clients in India, so that they do not face, ultimately they do not face action or the wrath of the government due to the legislative changes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. So it sounds like your role as a lawyer is not just to advise on the law, but to help prioritize for your clients.
Yeah, because as a lawyer, normally the perspective of a lawyer is like the person is a hired gun. A lawyer is a hired gun. If on the lighter note, the lawyer is perceived as a hired gun, or as Charles Dickens has put it, like lawyers are intellectually hired to fight against each other. So it's not the perspective of lawyering has completely changed, according to me. It's now how you advise your client so as to save your skins from the wrath of litigation, because the cost which you will invest in compliance is much less which you do it in litigation. And by that, of course, litigation will fill in the pockets of lawyers, but it will ultimately result in years and years of fight, which will not result in much. Rather than that, if you advise correctly, the clients will come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. So it sounds like everybody wants to be in the category of clients who see the big picture, who have that roadmap already in mind. You don't want to be in the 30% of clients who have their priorities wrong and they say that, you know what, we're going to focus on profitability. So my next question is, as in-house counsel, because you are in a position to see the risks that are looming ahead in the distance, how do you then, shape the business culture? How do you shape leadership decisions to say, hey, I'm going to prioritize these? Because we do see sometimes in-house counsel saying, that's not my role. I just do the legal side of things. That's up to the business. What are your thoughts on that, Naveen?
Yeah, I mean, I was touching on this part in my previous answer as well. The thing is that, okay, if lawyers stick to law only, then I doubt their success in the organization. Why? Because even wherever you talk in the corporate circles, if you talk especially to the business leaders, what is your choice? What kind of lawyers you want to work with? The first answer will be who can partner with the business, who can advise the business in time and advise practically. Don't just tell us the law, but tell us how to do this. Because then the job of the lawyers is to interpret those things in a way and say perceive the looming risks in advance and advise the business in time that, okay, see, for example, even in the ESG space, as I mentioned, that what are the voluntary obligations today will become the law tomorrow. So for the organizations, if that kind of advice lawyers bring, partnering with the business, then the business can be ready in advance. And that is where businesses nowadays have started making voluntary commitments. Like, because this climate change problem is coming, global warming, which is threatening the entire existence of humanity on this earth. So that is why businesses are coming forward and making commitments to decrease their footprints, to increase the efficiency of their businesses, and to also to give back to the society, because that is the entire purpose of it. Even if it is not mandatory under the law, then still the businesses are doing it, because this is done by those companies who want to stick to the sustainability. Because if they just focus on the profits, they cannot sustain. And that is where I say that they cannot complete those 100 years. Because if you look at these, the entire corporate world, either you will be something will happen as it happened with Enron, right? So you vanish from the scene, or you are bought out or dissolved or like that, right? So those kind of things are happening, and that is where the lawyers, they have to keep this thing in perspective, and for doing these things on the ground, like, the lawyers actually need to get their hands really dirty, in the sense that, okay, they partner with the business, they advise them in the time, and they go to the ground raising awareness, trainings to the business partners, or say, like, to the employees, and then also monitor it, right? So these are the things which lawyers need to do for to be on the top of it. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Kalindee, do you want to go ahead?
So Hannah, I think sometimes it's very important for lawyers to, wear the hat of what is right for the organization, right? Because when you are really sitting at the board and you are responsible to your investors and you are managing your top line and the bottom line, it's very easy to not look at what your ESG line is or what your green line is. But as a legal function, we step in to advise what is right. And it's very situational. So there are no rule books always for this. So for example, during the COVID times, companies did come up and they did a lot of welfare activities, not only for their employees, but even for the larger population or for the society in which they lived. Vaccinations were made available. They tried to create hospitals for their employees and for the families and for the economy, the environment in which you are conducting your business, right? There are a lot of societal responsibility that an organization has beyond your just employees and your suppliers and your core ecosystem. So how are you living up to those expectations will become very critical. I think as legal function, it's equally important for us to advise on how you take the right decision for your employees, right? There are a lot of situations which we are seeing, and especially post-COVID, where the emotions are very high, and sometimes somebody is filing a very frivolous litigation. For you, it's very easy to spend some money and settle it, but is that the messaging that you want to convey, provided that it's indeed a frivolous litigation, right? The business would say, okay, just settle it at any cost. I don't want this rubbish to be coming on my desk. I have no time to pay. I really need to focus on my sales. I have a number to close. I have a quarter to close, right? So doing what is right. For me, my fundamental lies, we have a leadership credo, and I live and thrive by doing what is right. And that is like my filter question. Is this right? And then it does not mean that it's going to impact the profit, but doing what is, fit for the purpose and the situation. So I think some of these questions really help you to, contribute. And like Naveen said, we as legal function, we are really expanding ourselves into each of the business processes, supporting our customers. There could be a customer issue, but if you are wrong, are you willing and bold enough to acknowledge that, yes, you messed it up, you apologize, and this is how you make it right. So I think it's really very broad role, and it's not just core legal. I think I enjoyed being the chief of staff for our Asia president, learned so much about business strategy, and when I'm now applying that in my legal function, I think it's becoming very beautiful and circular.
Very nice. Okay, I see a lot of movement on the ground. Do we still have time, or are we, how are we for time? 6 more minutes. Okay, I'm happy to open the floor to questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hands. But if not, in the meantime, I have more questions. My next question actually has to do about processes. Oh, we have a question, please. So, I'm so sorry. There's a microphone over there, I believe. Right behind you, to your left. There.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful discussion. I have the question to all the panelists, and this is having one fold for the in-house counsels and one for the Mr. Chatterjee. Being a board member, as Kalindee just said, that have you ever faced such kind of situation where the board is, asking you that you are imposing and forcing us to implement X, Y, Z to invest into this or that, to implement such and things, and it is increasing our cost. So how will you because you are a counsel, so you have to provide us a solution that by when we can get the the benchmark of that. One is that, and if such kind of situation, Mr. Chatterjee, you are also facing, because as you know, the mentality of most of the businesses that they don't want to invest actually, but yes, there is a pressure of the government and enforceability and other litigation costs which we are, as you have already said. So it is always enforcing the others, but yes, in a gooder side and in a best side, so both the sides we want to just have that when you are sitting in the boardroom, closed boardroom, and you know the consequences of that, but you are enforcing board to do that, and they are putting pressure on the shoulders of you for the cost. Thank you.
I think I can go first on your first part of the question. It does happen, but I think it also depends on the maturity of the organization. So, as an in-house counsel, every time I see something, I always make it a point that I'm educating my board. And I work not only with the Asia board, but even with the global board, right? So it's very, very important that you keep them abreast with what's coming. Even if it is not notified, it's still in the making, but you have to keep them honest with how your external environment is changing. Because when the change really hits you, you don't want them to ask the question that you just asked. They should absolutely be in the know. They should know that this is something that they have to do it. And maybe the best situation is that how you are collectively putting your heads together in terms of making it happen, rather than asking, is this essential? So that's the first part. The second part is that you are in a position to educate and guide them. Do not undermine the position that you hold in the organization, because if they didn't value it, you wouldn't be in the position that you are, right? So they really need your advice and counseling, and therefore you are hired and you are, paid whatever you're paid for. So don't lose out on having your voice heard and ensuring that you're doing justice to your job as well.
Yeah, and if I can just supplement what Kalindee had said and expanded, I would start it from the board members itself. So when people reach up to the board level, they have already gone through a whole lot of process, say their on-job training, starting from managers to hierarchy. And in many cases, boards, and that is where the governance comes, the boards need to be diversified. They bring a lot of knowledge and from diversified fields, and they are supposed to be already known about it. First thing. And second thing is that, okay, as lawyers, as compliance officers, we do have a responsibility to educate the boards in time. And that is to keep them current and updated about the external environment. And there comes to make them understand the value of investing into compliance program, or say investing in the culture is there are two things. One is positive, one is negative. The negative is that, okay, you can always bring the case studies to them that, okay, in the similar business, in similar situations, people has faced so much of problems and sometimes multi-million-dollar fines, etc. And that makes them serious, one thing. Second thing, that compliance programs are not just to save ourselves from penalties. They actually support the bottom line as well. How? Because compliance by nature of it brings efficiency. And when there is efficiency in the business processes, then that supports the profitability. Not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. And that is the core part of the ESG, the middle word, as sustainability, because the business cannot sustain for a really, really long time if they are just chasing to comply with the legal obligations. So they have to be 2 steps forward, perceive the risks in advance, and that is where the role of lawyers is, that keep your boards educated and updated, and they will be very supportive, and that is their duty as well, because that is the definition of tone at the top. They are at the top of the company. They have to maintain their tone, and they have to support their compliance programs. They do it all the time.
It says, right? If you feel compliance is expensive, try otherwise.
Yes, try otherwise.
Yeah, answering your question, sir, it's you see, we as lawyers, as practicing lawyers, in India do face this real-time problem, because we generally get an answer. I'll put it in Hindi. जब time आएगा तो कर लेंगे. This is the normal response which we have. कर लेंगे. Like this कर लेंगे will become very, very expensive when you try to amend. I would just diverting from the question. You would know, if you are in Delhi, there are a lot of old structures which are lent out by L&DO office in and around South Delhi area. The Latins, which you say, and like the Sujan Singh Park around in and out, where development projects, especially where the PTI building or the UNICEF building and all those buildings are there, the rentals or you say the renting out is regulated by the leases by the government. So those have not been done, those compliances have not been done for years and years and years together. So when you get the penalty from LNDO or from the Ministry of Urban Affairs, then they get a shocker and then they run to the High Court and then they run up to Supreme Court. They're ready to spend on litigations just to avoid the compliance part. So my point to the clients especially is, coming back to a question, while environmental compliance is there, why not rather fall in line than to sway away from the line and spend millions on spend a comparative more amount of money in litigation? The lawyers will run after me on a lighter note because I'm eating up I'm saying something which is against the interest of the lawyers. But you see, sometimes the role of the executive, now the courts have become very circumspect while interfering with the policy decisions. Now, if you are not complying, the courts will not fall in line. You saw what happened with the Super Tech Towers, the Twin Towers, that it was demolished. Even the Supreme Court did not save it. So, and even the Bombay High Court has come up with has said similar things for the builders who have not followed the building regulations. So building regulations are another part of the environmental project where you do not comply with the environmental norms. Even Mr. Ambani was faced with such a problem when his house was in the green zone. So he had to comply with it. Compliance is one and for all, and the genuine problem faced by us lawyers while advising clients is that kar lenge part. This part is gradually decreasing, but it needs to decrease more. The clients need to educate, like courts. When you go to the courts, now the clients will come up with why the case is not ending. The courts are overburdened. When you deal with such problems of overburdening of courts, qua the advisory part, we as lawyers must advise so as to reduce the number of litigations, avoid the number of litigations which we can have. Like as a board, you need to tell, like they said, the co-panelists said, and mentioned that you need to think positive as a board member or as an advisor to the company or to the business sector. You must put your foot down if necessary, that this is the compliance, you have to do it. Otherwise, when you face the music, then do not come and blame me. This is the language which, if you use or if you indulge in, or if you show them that these are the major roadblocks which you will face, and which, see, you make them understand in terms of money. Now you spend 100 rupees, but later on you spend 500 rupees, still there is no guarantee of your safeguard. Then they will understand. So this is the major thing which we need to address as lawyers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. And thank you to all our panelists here for the very engaging discussion. I could have gone on, but I understand I'm not allowed to anymore. So with that, thank you once again. Thank you to the organizers, and I'll hand the time back.
Thank you.